Hello, it is Harriet Prior and Neil Atkinson with a defensive midfield, a stats special. That's a really hard thing to say all at once. And we're in our new studio.
For the first time,
debut. For the first time ever. I'm excited about it. This is being known affectionately as the sauna. So do you like the sauna?
I like the sauna immensely, yes. There's different angles to come, but this one is the first one, and it is the sauna.
You're back from holiday as well to an implosion of sorts, I would say.
Oh, it was absolutely chaotic by the pool on Thursday. It was far too hot, and then it was heating up off the pitch, and it does look like Fabinho was going.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that now, and he hasn't gone on the pre-season tour with Liverpool, so that does all roads point to the fact that he will be leaving. So what are the key things then, if you're looking from a stats perspective, that we did get out of Fabinho?
So I've built a radar, and we did the same thing with the attacking midfielders, and we sort of said, what do we think Liverpool is looking for? So there's a radar now that should be coming on screen. It's called the DM Question 1 radar, and it goes through, first and foremost, if you can see it, it's Fabinho between the 11th of the 3rd of November 2018 through until the end of the COVID season, that where we won the league in 2020.
So it's good years.
It's good years, but also didn't use the year after where he was really good, but he had to play centre half because that skews things. And I didn't do much of last season. So this is what this is about. So this is what he did, and it also is a bit of me wondering about what Liverpool will do. So it's from the top, going round in clockwise. Passing percentage, passes completed. Pressured pass percentage, because I think that's a big thing for Liverpool. Deep progressions, which is moving the ball from outside the final third into the final third. Number of turnovers that you want to be as low as possible. Possession adjusted tackles. Possession adjusted interceptions. Dribbles successfully defended as a percentage in there. Ball recoveries in there. Pressure regains in there. Opposition half ball recoveries, which I think is what Liverpool might now want a bit more of if there's two of them, if Trent's coming in. I think they might want more of Fabinho starting a little bit higher than when he was a bit more of a pivot, even though we might drop back in a little bit and split the centre halves and that sort of stuff. Counter pressures in opposing half, defensive actions, and an aerial win percentage. So his aerial win percentage is quite high, it's 61%. So this is for all the players who play defensive midfield and centre midfield. That's what I've rated
So this is the radar that you've created, but based on the things you think Liverpool need from a defensive midfielder?
And that I think they might be looking for going to next season.
And what was Fabinho in particular good at then?
So Fabinho, this is brilliant if you look. He's really, really strong. He's strong for passing. Pressure pass is down a little bit markedly in there, and I think that we'll come on and talk about that with some of the people we're discussing. In this period that we're talking about, I've always felt there's a correlation between when you feel like Fabinho's playing well and deep progressions. So last season, he's on about 4.4 deep progressions a game. This season, this period, it's 6.72, which is 82nd percentile. Great on turnovers, 93rd percentile. Possession adjusted tackles, 97th percentile, brilliant. Possession adjusted interceptions, 89th percentile. Ball recoveries, 90th percentile. Opposition half ball recoveries, 94th percentile. Counter pressures in opposition half, 81th percentile. And aerial win percentage, 85th percentile. And if we go through and we're going to look at some players I've got here where, for instance, the next one along is Fabinho against the league average in that period, against last season's league average, but in that period of time from his point of view. And we can see here he is outperforming every single one of those averages. So with the exception of maybe pressure pass, no even pressure pass he's outperforming. It's dribble successfully defended, he's just a little bit lower than. Everything else, he is outperforming the average by quite a substantial amount in there as well. So that's how good he was.
So if you're looking then at things that they might want to get out of a player who's coming in to fulfil that role, would you like a similar profile, or do you think they'll be looking for other attributes and strengths?
Well, that's why I've included a couple of these. So I think that the counter pressures in opposing half, even though he's really good, I think they might want even more of that. I didn't have room to put carries in, but I think they might want a little bit more of that because I can only put so much into one radar. I think ball recovery is obviously a big one, and the opposition half stuff's a big one, and the aerial win's a big one. What I sort of would like to get is dribbles or carries, because I think they might want someone who can burst forward a little bit. But apart from that, I think that's a lot of what they're going to be looking for.
So someone who can take the ball from the back and carry it forward and actually build the attack from that position.
Certainly if you've got the idea that he's playing alongside Trent, so Trent almost being in charge of the deep progressions, moving them from deep with his passing range, someone who can maybe just run you 20 yards up the pitch might be no bad thing. That's the only thing that's missing, but as I say, there's a limit to how much you can get in. That was what Fabinho was. So a good way to say this is who's the best one? Rodri's the best one. And here's Rodri's radar from last season, where you can see it's pushing the boundaries over and over again. His pressure pass percentage at 89% is so high, 96th percentile. So you pressure Rodri, but he still makes the pass, 9 times out of 10 in there as well. It's interesting where he's a little lower. Pressure regains, because it's not adjusted to possession, he's a little lower, Rodri. Counter pressures in opposing half, he's a little lower. But you can see he's really high on opposition half ball recoveries. So when he does go and get involved in the opposition half, he's able to pick the ball up back. He just doesn't do it that much because City have got the ball more. Yeah. Defensive actions, he doesn't do it that much, but he's unbelievably strong on aerial wins, 96th percentile. And it's worth pointing out that winning 68% of your headers puts you in the elite bracket in this position in terms of that as well. So you can see that Rodri is the absolute business, and we know that, and that sort of makes me believe I quite like the radar.
So this is like the gold standard of a defensive midfielder in the Premier League, but other midfielders in the Premier League in that position, how do they compare?
So here's Enzo Fernandez, who again, you get to see his passing's good, his pressure pass again is brilliant, it's as strong as his normal passing, he's brilliant for deep progressions. There's just a few question marks over where he's winning the ball back, so he's good on tackles, but he's not brilliant in terms of defending dribbles. He's 82nd percentile there, so he's not 90th percentile, but he's still obviously pretty good. He's pretty good at pressure regains, but the ball recoveries aren't there. But this is one of those where we would say that Enzo Fernandez moves into a Chelsea side that's dysfunctional. Yeah. So you can't get too carried away on it. As ever with the stats, it sometimes asks questions rather than gives you pure answers. And one of those is, do we think that Enzo's really good? Yes, we do. He passes the ball well. He's done this well. He's done this well. He's done this well. But there's other things there that could be a team structure issue as well, and that's in there as well for Enzo. Moses Caicedo, we will come back to in a minute. Again, really good at what you think he'd be good at. Possession adjusted tackles, 95th percentile. Interceptions, 92nd percentile. What grabbed me, dribbles successfully defended, he's 93rd percentile, which is defending 55% of the dribbles successfully. And the reason why that's an important thing is, I think in our heads, we would think that the person who's brilliant at successfully defending the dribbles would be like 80% or 90%, but the truth of it is that if you're coming up against good players, sometimes they're going to run past you. Yeah. So you can't get carried away on that. What's dead interesting is his aerial wins is really high, and that came as a bit of a surprise to me, 97th percentile for that. I'll come back to Caicedo, because I want to just rattle through quite quickly. So here's Lavia. Lavia, it's a bit harsh because again he's playing for a poorer side, so there's a lot of stuff in here.
Smaller sample size as well. He's not played that much in the Premier League.
That as well. So across the board, you end up deep progressions, whether he's good at them or bad at them. If you haven't got someone to progress to, or you're not built that way, then that's obviously going to be down a little bit. Even stuff like possession adjusted tackles and possession adjusted interceptions. What that means in a practical sense is, obviously, if you have less possession, you can be doing more tackles and more interceptions, but it's going to be reduced down rather than for Fabinho and Rodri, it's pushed up off the way in which the maths works. But you can see it's pretty solid in there. It's not outrageous anywhere across the board. It's relatively solid. Aerial percentage win, 54%. I was a bit worried that might not be that high. I think pressure pass at 81%. Let's be clear about that. That's better than Fabinho's was in his peak era. So that's pretty good as well. Turnovers, he doesn't lose the ball a great deal in there. That's 64th percentile. So I think the stuff in Lavia. João Paulinho against the league average goes the way in which you'd think it'd go, which is the passing's not great. Pressure pass is only 72% completed. That's the 23rd percentile. That's, a lot of people are better than them in that. Loads more deep progressions done by other people. Even his passing, normal passing, isn't particularly spectacular. It's around the average in there as well. But he's great in the tackle. He's good at dealing with players who are dribbling at him. Really high on aerial wins, loads of defensive actions. But again, he's playing for Fulham, so could it be a little bit different if he plays for Liverpool? Yeah,
and there are some conversations around players that we've already got in midfield that could fulfil that number 6 role. So how do they, in particular, Thiago and Curtis Jones, compare on this radar?
So here's Thiago, and it looks absolutely spectacular. That's since he's been at Liverpool, and we can see he's pushing against this. Now, there's 1 or 2 that are low. Aerial win, he's not the tallest, and there's dribbles successfully defended as a percentage in there as well, which is. He's 43% successfully defended. That's 62nd percentile. Again, that means that he's in the top 40% for it amongst players in this position. But it doesn't look good, the idea that more than 1 and 2 people are getting past you. It doesn't feel like the sort of thing you want from your holding midfielder. But everything else, he's really, really strong at, including pressure pass. Jones is, I've put Jones up against the league average because you get to see, again, some quite interesting strengths and weaknesses. Aerial, question mark there as a percentage for him, even though he's quite a big footballer. Possession adjusted interceptions is really quite low, but he's better than you'd think on possession adjusted tackles, which I think is interesting. He's obviously been playing higher, so it's a little bit unfair to say, well, his opposition ball recoveries and his counter pressures in the opposition half are high, because he's more in there as amongst all of this. But the main thing to take from Jones is how strong the passing is. He doesn't give it away. Passing percentage and percentage pass, pressure pass, completed are really, really high. And, he looks dribble successfully defended. He's at 60%, which is 96th percentile. Pressure regains, 97th percentile. The opposition half stuff's a bit skewed. There's a couple of other Premier League players as well that I'm intrigued by. Tyler Adams.
Oh, you're interested in this one, aren't you? He keeps coming back up.
I think there's a footballer in Tyler Adams that is worth having an eye on. And you get to see here, again, he's massively... So he's around average for the passing in terms of passing percentage, pressure passes and deep progressions. He's about average for turnovers, but everything else, he's way beyond the average footballer in the Premier League. He's, for dribbles successfully defended, he's 97th percentile. Ball recovery is 97th percentile. Pressure regains, opposition ball, half ball recovery is 94th percentile. Playing for a not a good side, a side that was often quite deep. Aerial wins, 87th percentile, and I didn't think he was the biggest to the eye test, but the idea that he's strong at that. And the other one that is interesting, because I pulled it together, is I did Yves Bissouma from a season ago when he was at Brighton. And I just had a little look at it because it sort of got my attention. And then I then had a little look at what does he look like up against Caicedo. And they're hugely similar.
Yeah.
And I feel as though it's difficult, and it's a minor concern I've got with McAllister about the Brighton player thing. Caicedo and Bissouma here, yes, Caicedo's 4 years younger than him, and this isn't me making an argument that Caicedo's not going to be...
21.
Yeah. This isn't me making an argument that Caicedo's not going to be a really, really good player, because I think he will be, and I think he is a really good player. But it's very similar to what Bissouma was doing in amongst a similar setup. And the idea of Caicedo for 100 million, Bissouma goes for what he goes for last summer. It's not caught fire for him at Tottenham. I could understand if a couple of clubs were sort of looking at that sort of money for Caicedo for 1 year's evidence, looking at someone like Bissouma here going, there's really similar profiling, and I like Bissouma as a player from the outside looking in and maybe thinking to themselves, is this entirely worth a gamble, whether that's Arsenal, whether that's Liverpool? I think that he could be brilliant, and this is, if he goes on and is brilliant, I'm not saying, this is me saying he's going to be crap. My point is more, there's so many similarities here, playing for the same club at a similar time, in a similar-ish role. I just sort of wonder whether or not Brighton suits him down to the ground, and if he went elsewhere, it might be a bit trickier.
So other than Rodri, because I know that would be your answer normally, who would you like to see from those Premier League players you've spoken about come to Liverpool?
Off those ones, I still like Lavia, in that I think that he's done it in difficult circumstances and there's an eye test thing. I think there's just something in Tyler Adams. I think the responsibility he's taken for the United States, the fact that he's done bits at right back, suggests that he could help out there as well. I think he was the difference between Leeds staying up and going down. I think the thing with Lavia and Adams, I'm not making an argument for either of them as being absolutely incredible, but as maybe a cheaper signing or a less of a priority signing, I think both of them are interesting. The last little one is Calvin Phillips from when he was at Leeds, up against the league average. Again, really good on the defensive action side, less good on the passing side. I just feel like that ship sailed a little bit for Calvin. They're the Premier League ones, and I am ever so slightly taken with Tyler Adams with the idea of him playing next to someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold at times, where Trent does the work in terms of pinging the ball. I
think also an acceptance that we're not going to get the perfect player because that person just doesn't exist.
And he's called Rodri.
Well, yeah, there's not Rodri, but we can't. The gold standard of Rodri is not available,
no.
So other midfielders will have to be, and we'll have to make do with that. We're going to move on to talk about other players from outside the Premier League in just a second, but we're just going to do a brief interlude because it's been a lot of stats. So anything you want to talk about, Barbie?
Yeah, but I can't wait. Going on Saturday. Can't go.
Is that the day of release?
No, Friday's the day of release. I'm going on Saturday. I love Greta Gerwig's films. So I love Frances Ha that she appears in. She's great in White Noise, where she plays Babette, and I love the book of White Noise. She's the business in that. It's on Netflix, White Noise, if you're interested in that sort of thing. And I like the other bits and pieces that she's directed. Little Women was great. So I'm all in on Greta, and I've loved the publicity campaign, especially Ryan Gosling.
Oh, it's been sensational, hasn't it? I can't remember a film in the last 10 years that's had this much press and this much going on and attention. It feels insane. If it's not good, it's going to be a letdown.
It's going to be a huge letdown, but I think it will be good.
You think it's going to nail all the points?
I think it's going to nail it, yeah. Going to do the business. I've been on holiday. You're going on holiday?
I'm going on holiday as well, yeah. T-minus 3 days. I know. Well, I've been hearing about this heat wave that's hitting Europe, and I'm thinking I'm going to be in Europe, and I know we are now, but it's not quite the same, is it? I am a bit worried, but I'm also excited because when you by the sea, it's different, isn't it?
You need the breeze.
Yeah, you need the breeze. You need to feel like you can have a pool to get into. So we don't have that here. There's an argument for it. We could let Avenue HQ know. As the summer's getting hotter.
We've got a sauna.
We now have got a sauna, which is not what we're going to need as the Earth continually heats up. But that's one for another day.
One for another day.
Should we go back to stats?
Yeah, let's go back
to
to
stats. We've ended on a sad point now, but we'll go back to the positive stats. So let's look at players from other leagues then that have got your attention and why they have.
Or who's just been linked to Edson Alvarez is really interesting. Plays at Ajax. I've got his Champions League figures from the last 2 seasons up against the league average. I think, in there's question marks over his pressure pass is so low. He completes 90% of his passes, but only 74% of his passes when he's under pressure. His deep progressions are low. The turnovers are all right, but they're not great. The ball recoveries aren't brilliant in there. He's got a lot of really good numbers in his domestic league. Alvarez, I think pulling it into the Champions League comparison, I think frames it a little bit differently for him, and it might be a bit of a step up to come in and do Liverpool. He's good in the air. I don't think he's a bad footballer, but I just sort of wonder if Liverpool can do a bit better. We're going to rattle through these. There's Hadara, whose Champions League numbers were the business, and I asked StatsBomb to pull his Bundesliga numbers. There's a thing here where he's from Leipzig, and I just don't think we can take another one.
No.
And
hope for the best.
But also just the idea of Leipzig seeing our phone number come up and going, oh, come on.
Not you again.
Yeah.
Hangs up.
Turnovers really strong, very rarely loses the ball, gives it away. Possession adjusted interceptions really, really strong. Opposition ball recovery is really, really strong. Ultimately, you just wonder again, is it just a little bit too much of a step up? And this is one of the problems, and I'm sort of ruling a few out here as I go. I was surprised by Kone. It's not great. Actually better with the ball than without.
Well, a lot of people are saying that they don't actually think he is an out-and-out 6, and that's perhaps why on that radar he doesn't do as well. Yeah,
it doesn't do as well. I think you're absolutely spot on. So he's around average for interceptions, around average for dribbles, ball recoveries he's below average, aerial wins really poor. 37% of aerial wins versus the average, which is 52%. And, you're talking about Tyler Adams being substantially higher than that as an example, who doesn't come across like the biggest. So Kone being low comes a bit of a surprise to me. Then there's a couple of the flyers that are being looped around in the Bundesliga. Goretzka, really good player, playing for a good club. Pressure pass is lower than I would have expected at 72%. Apart from that, good on the tackles, good on the interceptions, and about average against the league for everything else. He's a big boy, wins 64% of his headers, which is admirable. But I expected a bit more from him in regard to the passing. I'd look at Kimmich. Passing's absolutely incredible. 95th percentile for pressure pass. Deep progression's really, really good. Not very big. Aerial win percentage is 21% in there as well. But he's good on the dribble, good defending dribbles, good at possession adjusted interceptions, good in the tackle, but we know it'd be a fortune. I mean, how much would you have to pay for Kimmich?
A lot. I don't know exact figures, but
too
much.
I was expecting you to know exact figures.
I'll get on the phone.
Or payment terms. So Kimmich is in there, not really convinced. Gravenberch.
Better price?
Better price, you'd have thought. Interesting, not that big a sample size from his games in the Bundesliga last season. Really loose on turnovers, lost the ball really sloppily, and that might be one of the reasons why he wasn't getting the team. What's interesting is there's been a lot of people saying he's not played that much at 6, but his possession-adjusted tackles and interceptions is really strong. His counter-pressures in opponent half is really strong. Opposition ball recoveries is really strong, but pressure regains and turnovers is really, really poor. Decent enough on the passing aspects as well. I think he's of interest. This lad, did you talk about Coop Miners on the gutter today?
We did talk about him on the award-winning gutter.
Did you? Because you've wasted your fucking time. He is below average in practically every single one of these metrics.
Next.
But I'm quite happy to go next. When I saw he was on there and all that sort of stuff, I'd looked at his numbers before, and this is just really, really poor. If this is where Liverpool end up, I'd have concerns. His pressured pass, playing for Atalanta next year, his completion rate 64%, fourth percentile by the standards of Serie A. Really, really poor. Ball recoveries is low, pressure regains is low. So we'll get rid of him and scoop ourselves along to Anguissa, who played for Fulham, who I liked when we played Napoli. You get to see him there, he outperforms a few things. He's a bit of a flyer, Anguissa. And again, this is a little bit of me also saying, we know Napoli are really good. Yeah. So here he is, and he's performing in a side that's really, really good. And you get to see him up there high on a few of those metrics, looking good, as you got to see with Ndombele, who's no one's flavour of the month. He's a bit messy, not a lot of ball recoveries, but good in terms of being dribbled at, looks after it really well. He's high for that, 98th percentile for dealing with people dribbling at him. Pressure regain's really strong. I don't think Liverpool are buying Ndombele, I'm just putting him in as an example, and he was part of that Napoli team. Kepa and Thuram, we've said in the past, didn't play as a defensive midfielder, and we can see here he's really low on a lot of those defensive aspects, and he's not pushing the boundaries on the other ones either. So I think that's worth bearing in mind as we move forward and think about this. Sangare at PSV is stronger, pushing against the averages in a lot of areas on tackles and interceptions. He is interesting, but now we get to me 3. So these are the ones that we've been linked with and I was pleasantly surprised. First and foremost on Amrabat.
That's better than I expected, actually.
Yeah, it's better than what I expected in the areas I didn't expect it. The passing, 89% passing, percentage, 85% pressure pass percentage, deep progressions 7.96 per 90. That's really high. It's 92nd percentile, and he's above average everywhere else, including aerial wins. Just above average on aerial wins. I'd have thought that'd be a little bit different. Interceptions, I thought that'd be a little bit different. Pressure regains 84th percentile. Amrabat there, of the ones we've looked at, profiles really nicely. The best one of all the ones I've looked at for this is Florentino Luis, who actually looks a bit like Fabinho.
Who we are linked with.
Who we are strongly linked with, but he cost a fortune. He's 23, but he's the one through all of this who profiles the most in a way that when the peak Fabinho, Rodri sort of benchmark in there, 93rd percentile for passing. Pressure pass is lower than passing, but it's still 83% completed, which is strong. Deep progressions, he's 93rd percentile pushing against it. Possession adjusted tackles, he's outside the radar, 98th percentile. Interceptions, 98th percentile. Dribbles successfully defended, 97th percentile. We like this.
Is he going to the top of your list then straight away?
He becomes the one where I think if Liverpool end up throwing a fair bit of money down, I think he's only 23. I think he could be the one. Benfica have a really good season, and we want Liverpool to have a really good season. You can't damn these players by saying, well, was he playing in a good side? Well, we think we're a good side.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by Luis. I think he becomes the one. The other one that I've really been entertained by is the link from Fluminense in Brazil of Andre Trindade.
It's a nice word to say, isn't it?
Fluminense is a lovely word to say.
Lovely, yeah.
He's an unbelievable passer of the ball. 99th percentile for his passing. 88% on his pressure pass, 96th percentile. He's brilliant when he's dribbled at, 97th percentile around that. Deep progressions aren't great, and there's obviously a couple of concerns. He's not the biggest, he's only 5'9", and you see that in his aerial wins. And in terms of what he's doing in the opposition half, counter pressing and pressure regains and ball recoveries, it's not outrageously good. But the idea, for instance, he is so strong in the tackle there, 83rd percentile, and he's good on the dribbles. I do wonder if there's something where, with the right manager, a different way of playing, he could come to the party. I end this sort of being in a situation where I think Luis looks like the strongest, Amrabat looks like the safe bet. Some combination of Trindade, Adams and Lavia are your additional ones. Everyone else, there's reasons to have pros and cons. I think the Liverpool players we've talked about in terms of Jones and Thiago give you a bit of a leeway because you both feel as though they couldn't sort of muck in and do bits and pieces. I don't think you're going to get anything perfect, but I think those five, I've looked at a lot of footballers here, those five are the five that as I say, I'll say it again, Luis, in terms of the numbers, it's just pure the numbers. Luis in there, Amrabat in there, Trindade in there, Lavia, which is a bit the eye test as well because we've got to see him, as is Adams and Tyler Adams. They're the ones that I think be interesting, wouldn't it be exciting? Will be exciting. Let us know who you'd like. This is going on YouTube, isn't it? So you can comment away and you can let us know who you think is in your top 5 or your top 3 or just your top 1, whatever you fancy. But we will be discussing all of these names on 3 gutters a week. We are in Gutterland thick and fast. It was 4 gutters last week, in fact. 4 gutters. Including an emergency gutter, the best kind of gutter. So for Robin. Yeah. I don't think it is necessarily for Jürgen. We have got one a week on YouTube as well. So if you join our members channel on there, you can watch that. There's a video one. And then, of course, you can download the app for all of the audio ones. We're doing loads of specials and a lot of players we're linked to as well. So do come and join us. It's, as ever, a very exciting time to be part of the Anfield Wrap. And we're enjoying making it, aren't we? Absolutely. In our brand new studio. Here we are. See you next time.